At its core, net neutrality means that all data on the internet should be treated equally. This generally means that internet service providers cannot block or degrade access to web traffic or prioritize some data over others. TPI and the University of Pennsylvania's Center for Technology, Competition, and Innovation recently curated a special issue of the Review of Industrial Organization that focused solely on net neutrality and the FCC's decision to classify ISPs under Title II of the Telecommunications Act. Some of the authors discussed their work and the implications of the net neutrality Title II rulemakings at a May 2017 event. These experts made several points. First, that broad overarching rules that make certain practices illegal are not appropriate remedies to potential problems. Second, the rules themselves are likely to be harmful to consumers by blocking innovation they might value and making entry into broadband markets more difficult. And third, surprisingly, stock markets have had no reaction to the rules, suggesting that investors, at least, think it's a lot to do over nothing. Michael Katz, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General for Economic Analysis in the Antitrust Division at the Justice Department and former Chief Economist at the FCC, argues that a potential result of the kind of level playing fields proponents of net neutrality would like may be, paradoxically, higher barriers to entry for some edge companies.
The question you have to ask is, what's so good about a level playing field? Okay? When what we're talking about really is not about, what we mean by leveling the playing field is blocking competition. We're against non-neutral regulations that artificially favor some firms over others. That's very different than saying what we want to do is we want to block competition because we don't want some firms to get ahead.
In other words, a level playing field becomes an entry barrier for a new firm wishing to offer certain types of different products. Consider paid prioritization, where edge companies can pay ISPs to ensure a particular level of quality of a data stream. Net neutrality proponents believe that paid prioritization would devastate entry and lead to monopolization of internet resources by the biggest players. However, as Katz explains, paid prioritization could, in fact, be an important way for new firms to emerge and compete.
But it can help an entrant to come in if it can purchase, say, a unique level of priority, or it's willing to purchase higher priority, say, than its rivals. It may be a way for them to create a niche to differentiate themselves and be able to crack the market. People know it's very different if you're talking about email versus you're talking about telepresence in terms of what kind of quality you need to have from the network in order for it to be a high-value service.
Another market differentiator that strict Title II enforcement could disallow is the practice of zero rating.
And for those of you who don't know zero rating, the easiest way to summarize it in this country is a practice called a policy, a business offering by T-Mobile called Binge On. My kids love Binge On. Why? You can watch as much video as you want without accounting against your data cap. So why has this got a network neutrality issue? Effectively, it makes video cheaper than other applications.
Eliminating services people want will make them worse off. T-Mobile's use of Binge On has helped increase the company's market share and helped create a fierce price war in wireless services. But in order to prevent unlimited video streams from overwhelming its network, T-Mobile implemented a technical solution based on the type of device a consumer uses.
Now, the other thing I'll make a point, the way this works is it lowers the resolution of video from HD quality to standard definition. Why? When you're watching TV on a device this small, you don't care. That is not an application neutral solution on the technical side. That is a specific video-only solution that solves actually what is in practice the big congestion problem on the internet, which is video. And so the funny thing is, the notion that everything has to be application neutral risks cutting us off to certain kinds of solutions which aren't, because the technologies just aren't.
And as Katz explains, that's really just paid prioritization in disguise.
Well, what would that mean? Think about that from the perspective of paid prioritization. In that world, what would stop a provider from saying, an edge provider saying, look, we want you to watch our programming, at the highest speed possible, so we will actually reduce our price, because we can tell what speed you're using, right? The applications have the ability to do that. We'll reduce the price if you buy a higher speed. So in a sense, we'll pay your bill for you. Okay, well, they do that. That's paid priority. They're the ones who are buying the priority.
Another argument in favor of net neutrality is the presence of market power in last-mile broadband provision. Michelle Connolly, professor of the practice of economics at Duke University and former chief economist at the FCC, argues that this concern is overblown given the extent of competition.
In terms of competition, if we are again looking at the 10 megabits per second criteria or threshold, 97% of census blocks have more than one broadband provider. They surveyed consumers and their broadband usage, and they asked the households that did not have broadband in their household why they did not have broadband. And the responses were kind of interesting. Only 7% said accessibility. 19% said price. 34% said lack of relevance of the content. And 32% said digital literacy. I found this amazing because we tend to be talking always about access and then secondarily price. But clearly we're missing a big part of the story here.
Despite competition, we still should not simply expect ISPs to always behave well. There have to be remedies available if they behave in anti-competitive ways. Michael Katz argues that we do have such protections without net neutrality regulations.
But it does suggest that having these broad prophylactic rules that just ban something are the wrong way to go, right? That the right way is to look at things case by case, which is what the antitrust laws, in fact, are set up to do. Now, you could say, okay, well, maybe the FCC should do that, okay, case by case. But there I would argue, again, that we're better off turning to antitrust law because of the lack of precedent at the FCC.
At the end of the day, of course, what matters is the effect of the rules. And despite the rhetoric, it's probably been small. Joshua Wright, Executive Director of the Global Antitrust Institute, professor at the Antonin Scalia Law School at George Mason University, and former commissioner at the FTC, believes that empirical evidence shows little effect.
What passed for the empirical evidence in the 2015 OIO was we had this claim, you know what, when we've got Title II, there's going to be a big boom in investment. They cite to some nominal figures. This is really easy. This is sort of fish in a barrel. If you control for anything, the trend goes away.
Robert Crandall, TPI Adjunct Senior Fellow and non-resident Senior Fellow at the Brookings Institution, found in his research that Wall Street has so far given a collective yawn to the whole thing.
And I looked at 4 different events leading up to the February 15 decision, March 15 publication of the final rules, and they were the DC Circuit opinion of January 14, 2014, invalidating the open internet rules, the Netflix Comcast paid prioritization announcement, President Obama's rather overt wading into this space and recommending Title II regulation, and then finally the publication of the actual rules, because the FCC announced its decision, but didn't publish the rules for a couple of weeks thereafter, and they might have contained some surprises. Now, and so therefore looking at how stocks performed, what their excess returns were in a 3-5 day window around that period, or even immediate response, might provide us some idea about why this was of interest to the companies, what the likely effect on them would be. Unfortunately, the results show very, very minor effects in most cases. My results suggest that all along the way, the stock market didn't view net neutrality regulation as a very big deal.
As always, the views expressed in this video are those of the speakers, not necessarily those of TPI or its staff. For more information, check out the full-length video, which we link to below, as well as the papers published in the May 2017 edition of the Review of Industrial Organization.